It was a perfect evening. All was calm and quiet. Dan sat in his home reading his favorite book, The Tales of the Great Pirate Birdy Bones. If Carly saw him reading this, she would tease him to death about it. Carly, if you didn't know, was Dan's pretty girlfriend. Suddenly, Dan got an idea. At the back of his book, there was a map. It read, "This is where the beautiful treasure of the blue bird Queen Daffodil lies." Dan checked the book again. Yes, it was a fiction story. But as he kept looking at the map, he began to think more and more how it looked almost exactly like an island nearby. Within an hour, Dan had packed a small bag which he strapped to his back. He asked his neighbor, Mrs. Tuftytail, to tell Carly he would be back by tomorrow night. Mrs. Tuftytail agreed. Dan thanked her before flying off. Carly probably would come to see him today, as usual, and he wouldn't be there. Dan had a hunch. He had a feeling that the map was real, and that the treasures of Daffodil were real. They would make fine gifts for Carly, and perhaps a rich bird out of himself. He had been flying only a minute when he felt another bird bump into him. "Carly!" Dan said with surprise. She smiled at him, but she still looked a bit annoyed. "Off on a treasure hunt, are we? Without telling me?" she said. "How did you find that out?" Dan asked in shock. "Your pirate book was open, and that map was laying out. I just guessed," Carly replied. "Well, you can't come. What if it turns out to be dangerous?" Dan said. "Oh, please. Don't be ridiculous. It's just a fiction story, Dan," Carly responded. Dan frowned at her. "Well, if it's not, there could be all kinds of dangers," he warned. Carly playfully pecked him. "I'll be fine, Dan," she said. Dan gave in. The two flew together to the island nearby. Once they got there, Dan began to lead them through the thick woods until they reached a large white tree. "A white tree? That is really interesting," Carly said. Dan nodded. "Just like in the story," he said, "and if the book wasn't fiction, there should be a little staircase for birds on it." They both squinted at the tree. "I don't see a staircase, dear," Carly said at last. Dan began to brush off the tree with one of his wings. Nothing happened. In annoyance, he pecked the tree. There was a strange creaking noise. Suddenly, a staircase came out of the tree. "Dan!" Carly gasped in awe. "Do you see this?" "Yes, dear," Dan replied smugly. They hopped up the staircase until they reached a hole in the tree. The staircase stopped there. "Just like the story," Dan said once again. They cautiously went inside, curious as to what awaited them. The end. To be continued.
Chickens, chickens, chickens. And they're actually not as dumb as I was saying, according to the book. They can learn how to skateboard. They can play baseball. They can play tic-tac-toe.
When you want to get off the darkest ground, but gravity pulls you straight down. Earth from a bird's eye view. You should grow feathers and see this too. When you want to get off the darkest ground, but gravity pulls you straight down. When you want to get off the darkest ground, get off that darkest ground. But gravity pulls you straight down. Earth from a bird's eye view. You should grow feathers and see